Welcome back. We've made it to our final session for the day before lightning talks. Our final speaker is Terence Huynh, and the title of this talk will be All the Things I Learned as a Junior Developer, so you don't have to. Take it away.
Cheers. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I know this is the last talk of the day before lightning talks. I'll try and be as energetic as I can, but it's Sunday. I'm already hyped up with coffee as it is, so I don't need to give any more excitement, but yes, let's do this. So before I begin, I just want to say thank you to PyCon for letting me speak here, especially on a topic that does kind of seem, at first glance, out of place in a conference like this. But I'm a big believer that conferences should do more career-related talks, especially so they can be more accessible and less scary to juniors and new starters in our industry. The reason why I'm so passionate about talking about this topic is because I want our industry to do better and care more about training the next generation of developers and software engineers, and the generation after, and the generation after. Our industry keeps wanting more people to join, but we do a terrible job in training them to be better developers. And part of the reason why I'm doing this talk is largely because of the conversations I've had with university students, graduates, students, junior developers, and all the like. In addition to being a software engineer at Atlassian, I'm one of the organizers of UniHack, which is Australia's largest student hackathon, and I was formerly one of the organizers of the now sadly gone Junior Developer Melbourne Meetup group. So based on those, I kept hearing the same old questions, the same old issues, so hence why we're doing this. There's an old adage in speaking, speak on what you know. I kind of know this. But I should address the elephant in the room. What happens if I'm not a junior? This talk is designed for everyone. The lessons I have picked, I've selected, should be evergreen in that you should at least hopefully resonate with one of them. And if my little talk does resonate and help address an issue that you have, great, excellent, I've done my job. But I'm also hoping that you take what you've learned here and share that knowledge with any other junior developers you may be training up yourselves and pay that forward. So, without further ado, lesson 1. It's very easy to burn yourself out. I feel like this is important to state because as an industry, we are really terrible in talking about burnout. This might be because companies kind of have an incentive not to discuss it or talk it at a very surface level. Now, I should acknowledge that upfront, that regardless of job at any company, you will face some level of stress and some level of pressure. Everyone's tolerance is different. But we can all agree that everyone has a breaking point. And there will be days where you feel emotionally drained. There'll be days where you just don't want to get to work. There'll be even days where you just want to hide in a toilet to get away from reading logs before putting a fake smile and dealing with the next issue along the way. It's temporary, it can last a day, it can last weeks, but that's a sign of burnout. There are plenty of definitions and think pieces on the internet, but I prefer this one from the Mayo Clinic, that burnout is a state of physical or emotional exhaustion that also involves a sense of reduced accomplishment and a loss of personal identity. I like this one because it incorporates something that gets overlooked when we discuss burnout, that it doesn't have to be a toxic situation or toxic workplace to reach a breaking point and suffer burnout. You can simply suffer it by being stuck in a constant, repetitive cycle with no end in sight. An easy example is something we've all faced, a constant state of firefighting and bug fixing, with very little of your backlog progressing because of said firefighting. And I personally can remember just being exhausted after a 3-month period working at some different company, which I won't name, where I was constantly firefighting because we'll get reports from our clients about something going wrong with our React Native app. We'll get a bug report, issue a fix, release a new build, and then something goes wrong. And the cycle continues again and again and again. Something has regressed. We have to do this, we have to do that. It also didn't help that this particular client was high value, and as you can expect, there were nights where I would often work late. there were compromises to be made to make sure that it would just work. L, to minimize loss in employees' reputation and revenue. Now, side note before I continue, if you're working in a startup or in a large corporation, invest in QA. Please invest in QA. The people working in QA, I would say, are personally the unsung heroes of our industry. They're worth the effort to prevent your developers from spiraling. So what can you do? There really isn't an easy answer outside of you have to look out for the signs, sorry. But I will say this, if you need a break, take a break, even if it's just for a few minutes. For example, go to your nearest cafe and get a cup of coffee, tea, hot chocolate, or whatever beverage you want, especially if you're working from home. Otherwise, if it's a bit too far, your kitchen suffices as well. But personally, I enjoy these small moments of peace because it means that I don't have to worry about anything related to work. I don't have to worry about logs. I don't have to worry about bugs. I can just breathe. But if that's not enough, if you do feel drained, take some time off, even if it's just for a day. If none of you have heard of a mental health day, congratulations. I'm going to introduce you to now. But for those who don't know what a mental health day is, that's effectively a day where you just take off from work to do some self-care. It can be just catching up on sleep, doing some exercise, visiting a friend, cooking, baking, whatever you want. The idea is you just do not do any work. You might want to tell your higher-ups why you're doing it or why you're taking that time off, but you don't have to. And it's important to stress, you do not have to. I do because I have a good working relationship with my manager, but not everyone has that luxury, and I fully acknowledge that. And there are many valid reasons why you do not want to tell that to your boss. So don't be pressured into revealing anything. For all intents and purposes, it's just another annual leave day. And if you're wondering why I'm showing this ABC article, that's the reason why I found out about mental health days. Turns out public service broadcasting actually works. And lastly, you should never feel guilty about taking some time off. Put your well-being first. So, speaking about putting yourself first leads us to lesson 2. It goes both ways. What do I mean by that? I mean, when you go out and interview for positions, you should always make sure it's a two-way conversation. Yes, obviously, make sure you meet the job requirements for the position, and yes, make sure you get fair and reasonable compensation for the work you are doing. However, you should make it clear what your goals are. Is this a place where you can thrive? As such, you should always make sure the company knows what you want and has plans to achieve that. For example, just on the top of my head, if you're looking to reach that next career milestone, like being a senior developer, make sure they actually have mechanisms to help you get to that point. But as junior developers, what should you be looking out for? At a bare minimum, and I would say bare minimum because surprisingly this is hard to do, you should have a plan in place to make sure they help you grow. They should have a working environment that is nurturing and supportive. And you should have access to a corporate body or mentor that can help you navigate through anything technical or even within the company, because we all know companies are complex hierarchies of management. I say all of this because I basically learned this the hard way. Turns out when I did my graduate placement, kind of did the opposite of all that. There wasn't a plan in place to support me at all or help me grow. I was literally dumped into a project 3 weeks in and was initially made to feel like I was some burden. I mean, how else would you explain being told to be in a corner to do dashboards? I will say, though, I made the best dashboards out of all the team. But I did end up finding my way somewhat. I was able to, for lack of a better phrase, quote, prove my worth to the team. I was also able to make a lot of friends at the company who are also very supportive in what I wanted to do. But there was still no plan. So After 18 months, I found myself not really liking what I wanted to do. And after some pushing and prodding, it was kind of clear that they weren't interested in giving me the support. They were more focused on the company line. So I left. In hindsight, and yes, hindsight is 2020, I should have asked this very simple question. How can you help me achieve what I want to do? I should have asked this question in the graduate interview process because it would have given me an insight in how they treated their juniors. Instead, I got a company that treats their juniors like another way to make some money. So if there's only one key takeaway, there's plenty, but if one of them hopefully sticks, consider what you want to do. Ask that question to your manager or recruiters and see how they respond and how they can help you to achieve this. Because, and I'm putting it out there, being stuck in a position that you don't like absolutely sucks. But with even the most supportive company in the world, without experience, sadly, you will not get far in this industry. Experience matters in this industry. It's sort of like our currency, whether it is joining a company or even getting promoted within a company. Some make a requirement you have to demonstrate this for a year before even being considered for a promotion. So it's critical because it provides the evidence you've demonstrated what they're looking for. But obviously, not everyone is going to get the opportunity to learn. And if you don't, does that mean you're stuck? Not necessarily. Lesson 3. Sometimes you have to make your own experience. Now, to clarify, I don't actually mean make it up, as in lie in your resume or fake it till you make it. Please don't do that. That is not illegal, but immoral. But what I am saying is that you have to kind of be a bit more proactive in trying to get that experience. And often you will have to do this outside of work hours, unfortunately. Don't expect to be given every opportunity, especially if your manager is trying to be fair to train up more junior developers in your team as well. So how do you go about it? How can you demonstrate experience outside of a corporate environment? Well, often the best way to show something technical is just by doing it. And when I mean technical, let's say like a framework or a programming language. Let's say you want to demonstrate your proficiency or competency in a front-end language like React or Vue or Angular or insert vibe here. You can do this by maybe volunteering some time at a charity, sporting club, non-for-profit to help them with their website. Other ways also include contributing to open source projects or even doing your own side project. Heck, even doing a hackathon counts as experience. I also want to emphasize this point as well, because you can do this for non-technical, interpersonal, soft, or I think someone actually mentioned to me on the hallway track, calling it core skills. Because yes, interpersonal, soft, core, non-technical, whatever you want to call it, while they're often forgotten, I feel they're also very important because they're very important to demonstrate because software isn't built in isolation, or most software isn't. Most software isn't built in isolation, it's often a team effort. So if you want to emphasize any of these non-technical, soft core, interpersonal skills, let's say project management, consider being a volunteer, organizer at one of the community events or meetup group in your local tech community. Also, PyCon's an option as well. Not that I'm promoting this, but there are many options you can do. PyCon is just one example of many. We're going a bit meta, but what I'm doing right now, this presentation, is me creating my own experience to hone and demonstrate my public speaking skills. So if you're struggling and still can't think of anything, I would also recommend doing this too. Why? Well, because communication skills are often undervalued and overlooked, despite arguably being more necessary in what we actually do. We think that these skills are largely used during presentations at conferences, like here. But you still use those public speaking skills in smaller meetings, Zoom calls, and the like. For example, what if you need to pitch an idea to your manager or the rest of your team? And to be quite frank, it's kind of the easiest way to stand out, because everyone has kind of a sort of expectation that is super low. The bar to speak is very low. And I guess everyone has sort of a bad example they will compare your presentation against. So if you're passable, and I'm hoping today I'm passable, please, and then it's all right. As long as you're honest, as long as your audience understands what the hell you're talking about. Now, do I recommend you stand up here and do a 25, 30-minute slot on a presentation to hone your public speaking skills? No, that's a bit too much. I would recommend you start small. There are plenty of meetup groups out there that will love to take you on board for like even 5 or 10 minutes. We had lightning talks, which will be next. So if you missed out the opportunity at this PyCon, the next PyCon, you can do something like that. Unfortunately, and I say this with love, public speaking is one of those things where you kind of have to keep doing again and again and again to actually hone your craft. So don't be disappointed, don't be discouraged if something goes wrong or you screw up. I definitely did once or twice or 15 times already. So, and I'm sure every other speaker has had that example as well. But all you need to do is just learn from it, brush it off, and try again. Now, onto my final lesson. And I absolutely chose this because chose this to be the last one because, in essence, it sort of sums up pretty much the other three. So, yeah. But also, I do find that it's also encompasses something more greater than what I've spoken about previously. So, if you absolutely only remember one thing from this presentation, I hope this is the one you take out of it. Lesson 4: do something, not nothing. So, for me, there's a perfect quote in Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. I know, it's sort of a hard read, and to be frank, I've actually never read the book. I've only watched a TV show adaptation of it, so I don't know why I've chosen this quote, but oh well, I'll stick with it. But essentially, this sums up my feeling for it, that I rather end up wishing I hadn't than end up wishing I had. Essentially, it's better to do something that even if it flops, then looking back and regretting that you didn't do anything what you could have done. So if you find yourself stuck, stagnating, or just feeling negative about coming to work, try and find a way to change that situation. It can be very easy to simply ignore it and push through gritted teeth. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Of course, I would note, there is a caveat with this. This may not apply to every situation, obviously. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do something blindly. And I also don't recommend you resign on the spot and flip your boss in a public spectacle, despite how tempting it might be. But sometimes the easiest way is just talking. Talk to your peers, talk to your friends, talk to your manager. If you have a good relationship, like I said, I do, some don't. But you might be surprised on what the answer may be. And I say all this because of what happened for my graduate program. That same graduate program, I ended up leaving 18 months later. Yes, they didn't support me, but it wasn't really the full story. It's slightly worse. In addition to not providing a supportive environment for a graduate, they pushed me to change my field from being a full-stack software engineer to being in DevOps. I should stress that I don't hate DevOps. I like it, it's just not for me as a full-time career. I much prefer building websites and maintaining CI infrastructure, and I also understand that's a gross oversimplification of what DevOps is. They said it was temporary, just a few weeks. But a few weeks became a month, then 3 months, then 6 months, then indefinitely. So, in essence, in effect, I was stuck in a role that I did not want to do, doing work that I didn't want to be doing. But I took that frustration and bottled it up. I thought if I just wait, hopefully something will come that is better. I would be reassigned to something even greater. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I won't dwell into the details much. All you need to know is I tried to get promoted and got rejected. Yay! Yes, obviously, emotion. You're allowed to feel sad. You're allowed to feel angry. But I would also say use that energy and harness that for something a bit more productive. And what I did was use it to reflect on the 18 months that I learned. Why did I get rejected? And it was evident that the 18 months that I did of work was not, and I frankly admit this, was not up to scratch for being a software engineer. I ended up learning stuff for a DevOps engineer, not a software engineer. So that's what I found my voice to do something about it. And looking back, I should have raised my voice even earlier to avoid being placed in that situation. Maybe if I communicated my intent clearly, or maybe if I pushed harder at my manager to be pushed onto the right track. But at least I was doing something to change that situation. I wanted to be a software engineer, not a DevOps engineer, and it was clear, based on my conversation with them, that they did not want to change that. So I was left with two options: continue the path I was going down, or leave. Leaving did not mean that there was no consequence. There was some consequence, I should say. It meant that I would be effectively restarting the clock on my developer journey. Not many people leave a junior role for another relatively more junior role, but given my work experience was pretty much useless for what I wanted to do, it's an easy decision for me. So I jumped ship. The new company I ended up working for, a startup, took me on board knowing that I would be a junior. However, they knew what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be in the next few years, and they helped. During the 3 years I worked with them, they gave me opportunities where I could skill up and grow in a wide variety of areas, both technical and non-technical. For example, speaking. In addition, I learned so much about React Native that I effectively became the subject matter expert in the company and was able to do conference talks like that. That's me in DevWorld 2019, I think. Yeah, talking about React Native to a bunch of iOS developers. Not a good sign. But yes. But it also allowed me to continue to work upwards as well, to now getting a job of where I am currently, Atlassian. So it all worked out in the end. Go me. So this is the last thing I'm going to show. This is the obligatory summary of everything. You are allowed to take pictures if you want. Feel free. I will be posting stuff on Discord as well, or on Twitter or whatever. But in summary, one, it's never easy. It's very easy to burn yourself out. So take a mental health break. Never feel guilty about taking that off. Number two, it goes both ways. Make sure it's a two-way conversation. Ask what your company can do for you. Three, sometimes you have to make your own opportunities, so seek alternative pathways. And number four, always do something, never nothing. Staying quiet never works. So yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
We have some space for questions. If anyone in the audience wants to raise their hands, do so now. Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the talk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what kind of experiences you gained early on that set you aside from other students when you were initially looking for junior employment.
So to clarify, what sort of things I did to put myself in front?
Yeah, so you did the graduate program.
Yes.
Outside of university, or continuing from university. What other things did you do in terms of talks, and what do you think made you stand out in particular from other people who didn't get those opportunities?
So I think mainly because I was an organizer, I did a lot of tech community work as well. That ended up helping me a bit. So being able to demonstrate that, yes, I can project manage because, yes, it's not like a software project, but organizing an event, organizing a meetup, organizing a conference track, or even like a small bit of it, that ended up showing like, yes, I can handle what's been thrown at me. It's not going to faze me. But as well, like, I think as well, ultimately, and I probably should have mentioned this as well in this talk, I'm realizing it now, but networking. Networking is very important. I think that's essential in our industry. So because of the community stuff that I did, I was able to network, and that sort of helped me when I needed to jump ship.
Thank you.
No worries.
Sure. Are there any other questions in the audience? Can't see anyone else. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me.
There's one more thing before you leave. We've also got a gift and a card.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Cheers. Oh, no worries. Thank you so much.